All right, so for this second demo, I really wanted to focus on experimenting with some techniques. I played it pretty safe in the first demo to kind of show how to paint a face, but now I want to go further in just seeing what will happen, taking those risks. So I'm going to put a puddle of water on the forehead here, and I'm going to try and create a bloom effect with the ink. So remember to include both materials as you paint and see what happens. So I'm kind of liking this, and then you can always add more water and shift the water around to kind of paint with it and control it. So once you've added something, you can kind of see, and it does this kind of marbleization, which I'm finding very interesting. And then maybe I'll want to blend it in here. So then once it happens, like, how do you incorporate it? Where is it? Where are you gonna? What are you gonna do next with it? I want to really experiment. Create like a wash over here. I want to put a little bit more, using different brushes to get different effects. Ooh. And then knowing to let it dry, to let it do its thing and come back. So when you're painting, don't expect to get all the painting done at once. Look at how different my colors are now that I've let it dry. So I know I want to work back into those areas. You can see it's starting to dry and do things here. And I'm just going to spread this into the hair a little bit. And I'm working straight from I put some ink in the cap of the ink jar to kind of work with it. So you don't even need a palette necessarily, though I have a plate in case I want to mix. And if you really like ink and you want to invest in it, you can buy ink in all different colors, which is pretty cool. And where I don't like it, I'm just gonna work it in. I like how the watercolor is kind of bleeding with the ink. I might start to do that. Sorry, the cat just jumped on the table, so she just shook everything. I think I'm gonna see what happens if I bleed into the hair a little. And I'm gonna dry brush some of this out now that it's drying a bit more. I kind of like that white, but is it too hot? I'm gonna dry brush into it. Okay, knowing this is not my last layer, I might now want to work into that once it dries with watercolor. And then I'm going to bring more bleeding down into the side of the face. And now I think I want to bring in some watercolor in the chin. And you can see I'm leaving the eyes and lips last. I feel like I'm going to build up a lot of realism in there, so getting the washes on the face first, then building up the realism in the eyes and coming back to the face and reworking it. So as I'm working and experimenting, I'm kind of building a plan. And I'm just going to put some water down. Oh, it's bleeding. And I shifted my paper and that bled it out, so I want to just move this around. And like I said, you can't, it's gonna do its own thing and you're gonna try and control it. And just let it, remember it's water soluble, so if it dries and you don't like how it looks, you can go in with water and kind of fine tune it. So now I'm gonna come in with my watercolor and work some of that watercolor in here. And my paper is so wet. I really like these brushes that came in the packaging. They're good watercolor and ink brushes. They have a nice bend to them when you press down. So go ahead and try those if you haven't yet. And I want to get some shade. I'm dabbing with the brush, tapping. So using the different techniques with the brush. Okay, this is a point where I think I really want to let it dry just a little bit to see how it turns out before I move on to my next step. So like I said, as you're working, you want to make sure that you give pause to dry, let certain areas dry, work on others if you don't want to stop painting, but give yourself that time to let it figure out what it's going to look like. Don't try to control it too much. You can always go back if you don't like it, but if you're overworking it before it dries, that's going to create an issue. So now I'm starting to think about shading effects, coming back into my work while I wait for this area to dry. So I can work back into what I shaded yesterday, like under the eyes. Keep building that up. Because remember, watercolor is all, the shading's all about layers and transparency, letting those layers shine through. I haven't really begun to put any shading on the nose here, so maybe I'll work on that. All right, well, while I work on that and let this dry, I guess I'll let you guys get to work. I don't want to keep you too long, but I remember you have a progress check due. So you want to be working steadily and creating that time and space to let stuff dry. Don't try to do it all at once. So you're going to have to just kind of think about like where in your days can you come back to your painting, create a space for that painting that's safe, where no pets or small children can knock it over. And be careful of overworking. If you feel like you're overworking, then is a time to step away from it and let it dry and come back.